Welcome to Wines and Vines with myself, Christopher Mark. This episode is sponsored by Vitality Tech Inc., a precision viticulture company that helps you map your terroir, enhance your vineyard, and connect all that to your winemaking. After all, wine has soil in every drop. They do this by coming alongside as a coach to help you and your team blow out your goals with research-supported and tech-enhanced tools. Aside from its consulting services, Vitality is also a one-stop shop for trellising and vineyard material needs. From spreaders to anchors and posts and many other things, they're here to reduce your labor, increase quality, and get plastic out of your vineyard. You can find out more at vintality.com. Lastly, you can follow myself on our Substack, winesandvines.substack.com. It has resources, news, tools, and lots of other research and information that is of service to the wine industry. See you there. This episode, we're starting a new monthly series, What Just Happened. We'll be talking about what we've been up to the past month as a precision viticulture company, discussing news, and each of us sharing something fascinating we've learned the last month, such as research or something else we think will be of value and interest. For some time now, I've been trying to get our podcast series going a bit more regularly, and the honest truth is we've just been too busy with consulting work that's been just getting in the way. It's obviously a great problem to have, but I think aside from the interviews, which we're currently organizing, this will be a regular and easy to produce mainstay just to keep this kind of going and give us some momentum. And I hope for you listening, give you a lot of value. If you have any positive suggestions or constructive criticism, I'm all ears. Please reach out, and you can do so at chris@vintality.com. Now, let's get to it. So also really excited, obviously, to introduce Addison, who started with us October 1st. So you're going to be seeing his face around lots. I'm really excited about a lot of the new things he's going to kind of bring, things that have been outside my expertise around some training, viral testing, observations, plant assessments, all bud counts, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah, if you want to get into bud counts. How many have you done, Addison, do you figure?
Bud dissections?
Oh. Yes.
Over 65,000.
Yeah.
That was with a colleague, Luke, but between the two of us, yeah. A lot
would
of
that be like
on the thumbs.
Lifetime or in one season?
One season was 38,000, and then the other one was a little less, but yeah, because those 2 cold years, right?
Yeah. Oh, of course. Yeah. So once you're if you're ever curious about bud dissections, Addison's your guy.
I've seen it all.
So tell us a little. Actually, I'm just going to redo that. I don't like my intro there. I don't think I did a good job. Sorry. Let's redo it. So really excited. Welcome Addison to the team. Joined us October 1st. So some of you may have seen him around. Brings up really one of the cool parts for me, for Vitality, is he's bringing a bit of a different skill set than I have. There's lots of experience he has with doing all kinds of plant, weed, pest, disease management, as you're going to hear a little bit about. Also, obviously, one of his big things was how many bud dissections do you think you've done?
Cold damage bud dissections. Yeah, over 65,000. I think we were almost at 70. This year, one season was it was huge, over 35,000, and that's 10 cane samples with 10 buds of cane going through it. So,
and you've got all your fingers?
Oh, well, the thumbs aren't taped, so. But it was, work safe because it was like, should we report that? No, it's not. But a lot of electrical tape, a lot of fingers, but need so once we get to done, I'm the man.
Exactly. So what, maybe just share just a little bit about your background and kind of how you ended up with Vitality.
Initially born and raised in Penticton, and kind of got out of town when I was 19, like a lot of people do. Moved around, ended up in Vancouver, running a business with my brother for custom spas and water features and stuff, a lot of concrete, carpentry, farming, running a business, managing crews. So kind of hit 2018 and then thought, kind of got a bit citied out, and then got my VIT certificate and found myself working at Terroir, and was kind of in the technical department with Mike Watson leading over me and a few other colleagues. And I was mainly really into the pest and disease, the hard stuff out there, digging for worms, looking for bugs. So stuff like that. Did a lot of the training, provided all the training for the foreign workers. So did training in mildew, cutworm, botrytis, leaf hopper, scale, mealybug, virus surveys. So trained ran around 20 to 30 guys each season that would come back, and they were kind of my eyes, and I would double check their findings. And kind of IPM principles is when we reach our thresholds, then we act. And certain sites were organic, certain sites were conventional. So I got knowledge in both. And then there's the other side of it that I was kind of tasked with, the historical chemical use, database building and tracking. So we're not running into issues with using the same product, pesticide and herbicide groupings. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah. So that was what I've been doing last 5.5 years. And just within the last few years, definitely diving really headfirst into farm plans and sustainability certifications. So that was a big thing we were working on. And then, maturity sampling and harvesting. Most years I would do around 2,700 to 3,200 individual 30 to 50 bunch maturity samples. So press those mini bunches, test the TA bricks, and then have the lab double test them to verify our numbers were. So was what kept me busy from mid-August to the first frost. And it's really weird to not be losing my mind in October. Great.
It's a little bit of a different October experience for you.
Yeah. I get to see what it looks like, because it was gone to work in the dark and home in the dark. So it's like, I didn't know if the trees changed color. Like, what is that? So it's nice. It's great.
You've already given me a couple of new ideas, even for, obviously we got to talk a lot about spraying come New Year, when that's coming, because work on spray programs and think, there's a lot of, I think different things we can talk about, but I think you kind of hit on a lot of why I'm, among many other reasons, excited to have you on the team, because you're definitely bringing a lot of different skill sets beyond what we already had. So welcome. And why don't we get into it a little bit?
Cool.
Something else you and I were talking about is just the timing, how this is also now a great time to be doing kind of viral assessments, given the change we're seeing in leaf color.
Yeah. You can, those bright red canopies you see through the valley in some areas are not normal. I've even seen, not going to name names, I've seen flyers out for certain places that feature these beautiful fall red color vines, and you go, oh, that's not normal. That's some disease going on.
So then is there anything specific you're looking for right now?
Either different style of venation, so you can have red veins on green tissue, or green veins on red tissue, kind of determining trunk disease, or red blotch virus, or amylaria root rot can also appear. It's kind of got to take things with a grain of salt too, because physical damage, anything that kind of interrupts the flow in the plant and can stop the recall of sugars back into the plant. So a lot of the time people think it's a virus, and then you look and it's got weed whacker or moweritis down at the base. And so that's also something. But without true testing and sending tissue samples off, you'll never really 100% know what it is, but it's good to know what you have and good to know how fast it's spreading. Is kind of why we always looked for it, to see how bad it is. It's staying still, it's manageable. There's nothing really for additives or chemicals to fight it right now. Apparently there was rumor of an inoculation to introduce another spore fungus to kind of colonize the area that the rot and the blotch viruses are taking up. So
yeah, I've seen some of that research. It looks really cool. We'll see how actually
yeah.
You always have the law of unintended consequences to have to be mindful of. But yeah, no, it's interesting too, because it's even from kind of what you're talking about with viral identification is also the same thing you see earlier in the season when you're assessing water stress, right? Like a lot of people think, oh, we're seeing leaf curling, we're seeing, these kind of visual signs the plant's under water stress, but signs of stress can be anything. It could be a nitrogen deficiency. It could be, you've got some of the vascular tissue is damaged, right?
Yeah.
It could have absolutely nothing to do with water availability. It could just be that the atmosphere is too dry and there's no amount of water the plant can uptake, right? And so I think it's the same thing with viruses, where you want to monitor, know where that is, but you also want to be careful you're not making assumptions that you actually can't validate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one of the other cool things, and this is obviously before you joined us, Addison, but kind of talking about some of what we were doing last month. So obviously we're doing lots of site assessments right now, and that's what we've been kind of doing in September. It's definitely one of the big pieces. Obviously with growers shutting down, that's something we're going to talk about in a moment. But one of the other really interesting things, and I know I was showing this to you as well, Addison, is we were doing some soil pits a couple weeks ago, and we just saw these. You can go on our Instagram and find these pictures of these roots that had no bark on them. And I was going like, what the heck is this? Because of course we know we're in that fall flush period where we're in a period of high root growth, but I'd never read or encountered really anything where you were having large, like these were just not fine roots that lacked any bark. These were large, some as thick as my pinky roots that had absolutely no bark in large quantities. So sometimes half the root mass was barkless, but it also was varying based on site, based on, what block we were in. So obviously different varietals, rootstocks and stuff, but it was so interesting because, you and I were going back and forth a bit, and it was like, is this some sort of, like, I'm going like, is this a disease? Is there something attacking the skin? Because we know obviously kind of at the tips, they'll shed a bit, but I've really not seen anything like that, which was super cool.
No, I was confused, and then you kind of told me the reason why, and then I was like, oh,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And we were kind of going, and what Az is talking about is we then were going, okay, what is this? What's a negative? And I think kind of what through talking with others, kind of what we realized was that actually this is just growth. That because we know we're at the time of growth, and actually these are the vine structures that are storing carbohydrates or storing starches. So what's actually happening is this is just at that time of year where they are shedding some of that to grow aggressively. And, chatting with Ben Min was, and actually other researchers as well, and different areas. And kind of what I was hearing is that these photos, again, go see them on our Instagram, don't really exist anywhere. Like I'm sure people have taken them, but you can't really find them. They're not in the literature because we do so little studies of root structure in living vineyards. So much of the research is done in potted systems that actually you don't really see this. And there's no one's really willing to go and dig soil pits and do these studies. And so because we were there in the fall, we were actually just seeing them shed their bark and start storing starches in those roots. And the question, like one of the questions I had for Ben Min was what it, like some of these are really thick though. That's if it was just the fine roots, it would have been more straightforward to me. Would have been a bit more obvious because okay, these are definitely growing, but some of them are really thick. And I found that surprising when these can't be a year old. But Ben Min's point also was that we actually don't know because we actually really never studied how much roots can grow in a season. So we actually don't know what the upper possibility for vine roots is in terms of thickness. Like how thick and big can roots get in one season?
I'm curious of when do they lignify then?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%. When
it stays warmer for longer. So is it into December? Do they? I mean, down that deep, what's the temperature down that deep in the middle of winter?
Yeah. And it's usually it's pretty, it's much warmer, but exactly to your point. I mean, because you'll freeze, with the soil freezes, it's always very shallow.
Yeah.
And so, it's a great question. And I think, what was really cool too is we also hit this other area where last year vines had been ripped out, and we saw the same thing. And this again was what was throwing me off, is you had young vines in there that, we had roots at 1 meter deep. So they were obviously not from these young vines, and they were from the vines that had been ripped out. And they also lacked lignification. You're going, what the heck's going on here? And then of course we found out they'd been ripped out at the same time last year. Yeah. And so they'd obviously had been going through that same kind of fall flushing growth. Just super cool just to see, just to see some of that. I'd really encourage you to go onto our Instagram and just look at those photos, because it, just that variation. You could even see, like, we were seeing some rusting and stuff I was a bit puzzled by, and it really just seems like it was just from the discarding of that tissue, and then it just forming this kind of orange color in the soil. So that kind of, I think if there's one piece from last year, that was just something, or last month, sorry, in September, that was kind of the one, oh my gosh, this is super cool and super interesting. And just, you realize how poorly studied it is. I mean, we have this entire underground structure we know nothing about, so little about.
Yeah. Secret world.
Yeah. I mean, it really is. I think the other thing you and I were talking about too, we wanted to touch on, was obviously growers going under, which is a huge one. Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah. It's so we're, I don't know how much you have to say on it, Addison. I think obviously, it's going to be tough. We're going to have to navigate what that's going to look like in terms of replacing, just even as you were saying, like, where do you go get your tape? Where do you get those little pieces you need?
Yeah. It's kind of your one-stop shop, and it going under just means more time for everyone shopping around and calling in orders or getting things from the coast. And I think it was kind of a community hub for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Because you never know who you run into when you're there. And you say, oh, hey, stop by my place. Or they had their grower days, and they put on a lot of events. And the hot dog day down there, you get your free hot dog. You can just kind of snoop and, gossip with all the other farmers and growers. And it was great. And not to have that kind of hub loss sucks for, not only employees, because there's a lot of people there. And they were really, I've never had a problem. They were always super quick to get back to me, what you wanted in the business, and they're not going to be around. And we have all those questions from everybody saying, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
Hey, do you know? Hey, do you know? Hey, do you know where we can get this? And
and
it's a void.
And we're doing, like, obviously with us doing trellising and posts, like, there's an element where, there's some, like, we're doing some of the stuff that they were providing, but obviously there's lots of things, we're not doing. So there's just even providing, like, competition on fertilizer, right?
Yeah.
Like, we've got CareLink, but we've now lost a lot of competition with, some of the other pieces, equipment, other things that they were offering, that we just gave you another option. You kind of you could compete and shop around a bit, and now we're going to lose a bit of that. Chemicals,
and it was just easy. Is the best thing about it, is you give a call, see if they like it. They checked in with their staff, see if anybody's had issues with a product or a chemical. Always pretty keen on showing me something new that's registered, or whether to take a lot of the claims with a grain of salt. That knowledge base being lost is pretty big.
Yeah, we'll see kind of what comes out of it. The other thing we kind of wanted to touch on and kind of make a regular piece to these kind of 30-minute-ish discussions was kind of one thing we've learned recently, right? In the past, obviously, we've done, obviously we'll talk a bit about things we're working on, but also want to hit on something like, what is something really interesting we've learned? And so we each kind of prepared just a little blurb or little kind of interesting piece of data. So why don't I let you go first, Addison?
Okay, yeah. But I guess it's a relatively new article. Let me bring it up if I still have it. I'll give you the title and then I summarized it a bit to be quick and not put everybody to sleep. The predictability limits of the 2021 Pacific Northwest heat wave from deep learning sensitivity analysis. So a lot of words, right? A lot of words for just us farmers. So basically, they ID'd there was a problem, and this is kind of the predictability of atmospheric events is limited to like really sensitive and initial conditions. And there's usually just short-term forecasts for it, so we can't really see what's going on. And the traditional models, were very computationally complex. And it was only a few days out, like 2 days, 3 days, they're going to say, hey, heat dome's coming. And so they've been applying like deep learning, so AI in a sense. And so it's made of, I guess, nonlinear differentiable functions. So that's getting over my realm of AI knowledge expertise, but they pretty much applied an algorithm with deep learning to conditions for long range forecasts. And they kind of bypassed the need for the little minutia events that kind of slow down regular forecasting. So let's see here. In the case study, they applied it to our heat dome we all saw, Pacific Northwest. And the method showed a 94% reduction in 10-day forecast error. So, wow. Yeah. So they ran it was on model independence. And they have something called GraphCast, and it runs on a different Pengu weather model, I think. And it suggests that they kind of checked their work against it, and they saw that the algorithm was working, and it wasn't just like a one model specific kind of finding. So their findings were they had improvements in the results of kind of forecasting. They really eliminated extra noise from kind of the micro kind of climates they were dealing with. So they're kind of looking at expanding that, weighting it heavier for current climate models and seeing if they can now sort of predict what's going on. Because even if it's not 10 days, a 7-day lead time on that would have been great. I mean, I remember they said it was going to be hot. It was going to be intense, but nobody knew. And even if they say, hey, extremes are coming 10 days out, and maybe back then people didn't really believe it was coming. Like, no way, we're not going to hit 49 or whatever, right? Yeah. And now if the alarm rings 10 days early, reduce your canopy, or don't leave thin, or let's not tuck right now, let's let it sprawl, or we have options. Let's see. Yeah. So I think it's cool. I mean, I don't know how well it can be applied right now, but I thought it was really cool for potential.
Yeah. So then kind of the practical takeaway is we might see some more accurate kind of a little further out extreme weather predictions.
Because they can nail it within 2 days. Yeah. Usually. It's pretty accurate. But as everybody always goes, don't look at the 7 days. Don't look at that 14. So if they can kind of rein it in and give us a 7 to 10 day accuracy, that what they say 94% in a reduction in error for that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
great actually. That is for not just our industry, everybody.
No.
What have you learned?
Yeah, so this is something you maybe have seen. I know you've heard from me, Addison, and you may have seen again on your Instagram, but this just fit really well with what you were talking about, is canopy structure. So we work with a company with a couple clients. We share consultancy with some work with Fruition Sciences, which I highly recommend. And reading the research of one of their owners is Thibaut Scolache, who's a researcher out of France, has some hyper practical research. So if you want to get into like irrigation technology, irrigation monitoring, for me, he's right up there with Marcus Keller. And some of the stuff he's doing, I think it goes a bit further. It's really, really cool. So he's someone I go to regularly for their work, and just is a bit of a genius on this stuff. So anyways, we were talking about this and what he was sharing, because they work around the world. And part of what makes it interesting is he's a researcher, but they also have a client base that is international. Lots in France, California, Argentina, Israel, Portugal, like, you name it. They've got clients there. And so what he was talking about is how they've really moved away from the kind of canopy structure size, volume to yield ratios. They've just found that does not work. They've seen all kinds of great quality grapes come out of wildly different canopy to yield ratios. And their kind of opinion is that it just unfortunately does not hold up. And this actually fits with some research that Simone Castellar down at UBC did. Hopefully I get this right, Simone, but they my recollection is there was something like they cut the canopy in half, and they saw no measurable, over a 2-year period, saw no measurable impact on fruit quality. They saw a minor reduction in carbohydrate storage. But the point, like, it had some effects, but the point is the effects were nowhere near as drastic as we would have expected. Yeah. The effects were much more minor. Now, of course, we'll see over if you do over the lifetime of that vineyard, obviously you would definitely see some different, more cascading effects. But in the immediate, it didn't have that effect. So what's, I think, really cool is how they've started thinking about canopy structure is actually not in terms of volume, but in terms of leaf exposure. And so the concept being that rather than trying to hit a certain volume, what you want to hit is as high a percentage of exposed leaves as you can. And so this gets to one of the weaknesses of our VSP system. And one of the things I'm really hoping we do with all this replanting is try a bit of different trellising, because I think we've become a bit too dependent on that VSP system in terms of, I think, willing to explore maybe some alternatives. Because part of what they found is that and this is a bit of like, if you've read Sunlight into Wine, this is actually bringing some of that back, in the sense of that if you have more exposed leaves, you actually can ripen that fruit. And again, I was chatting with Ben Min about this, and one of his points, of course, is, I think he just put it very succinctly. So I'm just going to read what he said, because I thought it just captured it well. So he said, light interception, that is light hitting the leaves, determines the supply side of the carbohydrate balance equation, and the demand side for water balance. And so again, here, I think what you're seeing is by exposing more leaves, that carbohydrate storage, you're increasing. Also, one of the things you can do is, as you have more exposed leaves, your canopy actually doesn't need to go as high. So you can actually reduce the height of the canopy. And so what that means is your total leaves decrease. So your actual exposure to water stress decreases. But because your canopy is wider, you have more exposed leaves, what you find is that actually your ability to ripen fruit, one of the super cool things they've seen, because of course Thibaut does lots of work with winemakers, and that's their kind of primary client base, is they've actually resynced up phenolics with brick. So what's happening, kind of because of this carbohydrate balance, the impact it has on hormones, the phenolics are now much better catching up, and the plant is resyncing them up with bricks, because of course we have bricks race ahead. We have alcoholic wines that lack the really aromatics and other structures that make them appealing, and they're finding that that's coming back together. So for me, kind of really thinking about that, re-changing how we think about canopy structure and thinking about leaf exposure. And this is where, I think, again, you'll see a bit of leaf pulling, but then again, their argument changes a bit. Where actually they're Thibaut's become very hesitant. They used to do lots of leaf pulling. They've actually moved away from it because they actually think it's counterproductive in many respects. But kind of the argument would be, how you want to think of your canopy structure is its actual get to the highest percentage of exposed leaves. And when you have that VSP, you have lots of shaded leaves, especially given the angle of the sun we have here. And so a lot of those shaded leaves are just a detriment to the vine. And are not really offering much, or if they're shaded half the day or whatever. So yeah, you've heard a bit of that from me before, Addison, but that to me is like something I just keep coming back to, and really it was a bit of a moment.
Yeah. I think, it makes sense. Like, shaded leaves aren't doing anything for you.
Yeah. And I think it's just like what's so interesting to me is like we've just kind of approached, even if you're not doing your own like canopy volume, like a lot of people don't do canopy volume calculations like to yield to do it. But it's like even just being able to go and visually look at your leaves and see like, oh, like think of like when you just have stacked leaves in a like you have effectively because our leaves are right up against the post, you effectively have a two-dimensional structure. And so you have all these leaves that are just effectively stacked on each other like a tower. You know, like an apartment tower. And it's like, how much sun are they actually getting? And that part of that, actually, there's a way that we could radically change things in terms of ripening, in terms of fruit quality, just by spreading that out and just by opening up that canopy with different systems. And that's where, like, I don't know what your experience has been, but I've had one of my kind of like pet theories I'd really like to test is I really wonder if GDC would be a better system here in a lot of cases. Now, again, if you're going to mechanization, if you're like a big grower, like there are definite downsides to Geneva double curtain, right, from a practicality. So it wouldn't work for everyone. But actually, because of that leaf exposure, that bit of that sprawl is another alternative to, say, using spreaders. But some system like that to open up that, to get a bigger canopy and to get much better leaf exposure to that canopy, because obviously with the GDC, all those leaves are on top getting sunlight.
So... yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and I've seen a few double curtains around, and people falls into two categories: you love them or hate them. I mean, I think you love them if you don't have to work on them, kind of thing. And it lifts the fruit up, like it. Yeah, I mean, for airflow, light penetration, it does make sense. But mechanization, if you have any sort of machine picker, then you're out. Then you're definitely 100%. Working over your head for hours to make you feel like, oh my god, I'm old.
But as someone who's 6'5", there are things I like about it.
Better for you, yes. So if you're, so this might be biased. The grapes are at your eye level. They're like here for you. They're up here for me. And I thought I was tall.
Cool. Well, I think this has been a lot of fun. Is there anything I'm trying dates? I actually should have had that prepped, but I don't know if we have any interesting dates coming up. I know. I gotta find the date for this. Maybe I'll throw it in the notes. I know. Vines to Vintages is holding because of course there's no Fortify this year, so I think it's November 26th. Yes, November 26th at Vines to Vintages. So it's they're kind of doing a Fortify replacement. Obviously, it's not going to be the big event, but I think that's cool.
Another important date, October 18th. It's my birthday, so that's pretty important.
Yeah, make sure to wish Addison a happy birthday on the 18th.
Thank you. I'm going to LA the next day, so
good luck at Disneyland.
Sorry, Chris. Hey, I've got mouse ears ready. I'm ready. We bought them here because they're cheaper.
Much cheaper than. I don't know if there's any other important dates that I can think of, but I think one of the other things too, of course, is make sure before you finish blowing out your irrigation system is refill that soil. And that can be like 24-hour plus soaks. Like I think a lot of people think you're going to wake up the vines or anything like that. And there's maybe a point, but I've been looking at some of our soil moisture sensors with clients, and you would be surprised how long it takes some of that soil to actually refill. It doesn't last the whole season necessarily, but it kind of gives you a bit of insurance, especially if we had like an early frost or things, we're hit with cold. So make sure get a long soak in to kind of refill. And if you have soil moisture sensors, you can go look back at your refill point back in January, February, see what that is, where was the moisture level, and then kind of irrigate to that.
Yeah, I don't think there's much rain on the horizon for us.
No.
So
no, it's been dry.
Putting them to bed on a year like this is super, super important for for our pruning decisions and to weather this winter. And it says we're going to have a cold winter. The climate models are pointing to that. It's La Nina again. So.
Yeah, exactly. So I think kind of prepping for that, planning for that it's going to get cold. I mean, hopefully, again, it doesn't get that cold, but you want to kind of prep as much as you can. So
don't be caught out by it.
No, in terms of your pruning, good time to soil sample as well, all that kind of stuff. So it's once you're kind of done, and we have a bit of early time. But I think something we won't get into now, but Alice and I were talking about too, of course, is one of the advantages we're entering right now also is we've had less, because we haven't had a crop, the plant's definitely going to have a bit of an easier time hardening off. And we were kind of chatting about some of the data and experience we'd seen with that. So there are some advantages.
Lignification was super early this year.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff. So yeah, a month or 6 weeks ahead, stuff was hardening off. So should be good. And I think people were running their frost fans last night. So if we can keep that frost and keep them happy for till the end, till the big one, we should be better poised come spring. Can't believe I'm talking about spring.
We made it. So we'll be back in a month. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Addison.
Thank you. No problem.
Let us know what you like about this, what you kind of a bit of a new format. We kind of want to have a bit more regular. We will have interviews, but I really have been wanting to get our Wines and Wine podcast back out there with kind of a bit of a schedule. So hope everyone has a great day whenever you listen to this, and we'll chat later.